In the dry winds of southern Wyoming, a low ridge rises from the plains like a scar in the earth. To travelers, it looks ordinary, a line of rust-colored hills stretching along the railroad. But to paleontologists, that ridge is holy ground. It is Como Bluff, the place where the greatest rivalry in science was born, the bonewars. Here, in 1807, two men transformed the search for fossils into a national obsession. Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope. Once friends, became bitter enemies locked in a race to uncover America's prehistoric past. Their feud would uncover over 100 new species and destroy reputations, fortunes, and friendships. It all began with a telegram. A railroad worker sent word to Marsh that giant bones were found near Medicine Bow. Within weeks, Como Bluff erupted into chaos trains, wagons, and men swarming over the hills with shovels and dynamite. The peaceful Wyoming Badlands had become a battlefield of bones. The discovery that ignited it all came from two railway workers, William Reed and William Carlin. While laying track for the Union Pacific Railroad, they noticed enormous bones jutting from a sandstone ledge. At first, they thought it was petrified wood until one split open, revealing the honeycomb structure of bone. They sent samples east, and within days, both Marsh and Cope learned of the find. Each tried to buy the workers' loyalty through letters, bribes, and promises of fame. Marsh sent coded messages instructing them to label crates chalk to avoid attention. Cope countered with cash, rare books, and even personal threats. Neither had met the men, but both knew the stakes. The workers, caught in the middle, began double dealing. By day, they sent bones to Marsh. By night to Cope's agents waiting at the rail yard. Newspapers caught wind of it and dubbed the ridge the Hill of Lies. One letter from Reed survives, written in shaky handwriting. "We have dug up a monster tale longer than 3 men. Marsh says, keep it secret. Cope says, send it fast." By the end of 1877, the ground at Como Bluff was torn open like a battlefield. Tents flapped in the wind. Campfires burned beside crates marked in false names. And beneath the noise, the bones silent, patient-watched men lose their reason. Como Bluff turned out to be a gold mine of prehistory, stretching over 5 miles. It exposed layer after layer of the Morrison Formation, a treasure chest 50 million years old. From 1877 to 1883, dozens of skeletons emerged from its hillsides. The site known as Quarry 9 alone yielded over 20 articulated skeletons of sauropods and theropods. Each specimen was packed in plaster, hauled by wagon to the nearest rail depot, and shipped east often under guard. The trains were loaded with bones that would later define the age of dinosaurs. Marsh's crews uncovered Stegosaurus armatus, a creature so strange that newspapers called it the armored dragon. Cope's men, working only miles away, found Camarasaurus supremus, the largest land animal then known. But the rivalry turned brutal. Both sides blasted too much rock, shattering priceless fossils. One camp, fearing theft, even burned its own quarry to ash after excavation. They weren't just unearthing dinosaurs, they were destroying history in the process. The Bone Wars reached fever pitch. Each man sent spies to the other's camp disguised as helpers or journalists. One of Marsh's students famously switched sides mid-season, smuggling fossils to Cope under his coat. Letters between the camps read like coded military reports. Cope accused Marsh of theft. Marsh countered with claims of scientific fraud. Their insults spilled into newspapers, where the public devoured every word. The New York Herald called it a contest of titans amid the skeletons of monsters. There were true spy stories, too. A night watchman once caught a stranger sneaking into Marsh's camp with a lantern. When questioned, he said he worked for Cope, just taking a look. The next morning, several crates were found switched with empty ones. Another time, A train carrying Marsh's bones derailed mysteriously near Medicine Bow. Cope's men were seen nearby with shovels. Even nature seemed part of the rivalry storm's buried tents. Snakes crawled into sleeping bags, and wolves prowled the supply wagons. The desert itself felt cursed by ambition. Yet, despite the chaos, the discoveries kept coming. Every new skeleton meant victory and humiliation for the other side. Science had become theater, and Como Bluff its stage. By 1880, the rivalry had consumed them both. Cope sold his house to fund expeditions. Marsh begged Congress for museum grants, arguing his work was of national importance. Neither could stop. In letters, Cope wrote of exhaustion, sleepless nights, and hands bleeding from the stone. Marsh confessed to colleagues that he dreamed of bones mountains of them, crushing me. The pressure destroyed friendships and marriages. Students abandoned their mentors. Workers quit mid-season, unable to endure the secrecy. Meanwhile, local townsfolk scavenged broken fossils to sell as curios, scattering priceless fragments across Wyoming. When the dust settled, both men had made history and enemies. Como Bluff was stripped bare, its hills pock-marked with craters and tunnels. The war had ended, but the scars remained in the land, and in the men who fought for it. For all its madness, Como Bluff gave birth to modern paleontology. Between 1877 and 1802, Marsh and Cope's teams named more than 130 new dinosaur species, including Triceratops, Apatosaurus, Camarasaurus, Allosaurus, and Stegosaurus. Many of these giants still define our image of the Jurassic world. The fossils filled halls in Philadelphia, Yale, and Washington, D.C. For the first time, Americans saw the bones of their own prehistory, not just relics from Europe. Como Bluff made dinosaurs part of the American identity. It also inspired a new generation. Children reading about the bone wars dreamed of becoming fossil hunters. Museums grew, funding expanded, and paleontology became a respected science. Even the rivalry itself became legend proof that passion, however destructive, can still uncover truth. The bones outlasted the men. They still do. After the 1890s, Como Bluff fell silent. The quarries filled with dust, sagebrush, and the bones that had escaped notice. For nearly half a century, no one returned. In the 1930s, UK surveyors rediscovered the site while building roads. They found rusted tools, broken plaster, and human remains, likely one of the early diggers buried where he worked. Local ranchers used fossil beds as landmarks for cattle drives, unaware they were walking across history. In 1962, a new generation of paleontologists arrived with cameras, maps, and optimism. Led by Dr. John Ostrom, they resurveyed the ridge using aerial photographs from World War II. The team located dozens of old trenches, some still lined with plaster fragments from the 1880s. They reopened one, unearthing a cluster of vertebrae still embedded in the original sediment, untouched for 80 years. That rediscovery changed the tone, no longer a battlefield. Como Bluff became a classroom. The same ridge that had divided science now began to heal it. Modern paleontologists now treat Como Bluff as a window into an ancient ecosystem. CT scans of the fossils show microfractures revealing muscle attachment points and bite marks. Geochemical analysis of the rock layers indicates alternating wet and dry seasons, shaping how these giants lived and died. The site reveals a Jurassic floodplain filled with ferns, horsetails, and cycads. Predators like Allosaurus hunted sauropods near riverbanks. Carcasses drifted downstream and fossilized in the silt. It was a world in motion, not a graveyard, and Como Bluff preserves its rhythm like a fossilized heartbeat. Scientists can now trace DNA fragments of ancient bacteria trapped in the bone pores, tiny chemical ghosts that outlived extinction. Each discovery adds nuance to a story once written only in rivalry. Now, the focus is cooperation, not conquest. Teams from Yale, the Smithsonian, and the University of Wyoming share data freely, honoring what Marsh and Cope could not: humility. At dusk, the wind over Como Bluff sounds like whispers. Locals say it's the ghosts of Cope and Marsh, still arguing across the hills. Even now, researchers sometimes find old bullets or whiskey bottles in the rubble relics of those fevered years. Marsh died wealthy but bitter, buried beneath a mountain of debt and pride. Cope died surrounded by bones, still labeling his last fossils by candlelight. Their feud destroyed them, yet their discoveries immortalized them both. In 2015, descendants of both men met at the ridge for the first time. A Cope great-grandson and a Marsh great-niece shook hands beside an old quarry pit, their gestures symbolizing the reconciliation the men themselves never found. A ranger nearby said softly, "At last, peace in the bone fields." Visitors now walk under Apatosaurus skeletons that once divided the two rivals. Each fossil is both wound and cure proof that greatness often grows from conflict. The land remembers their passion, and perhaps their forgiveness too. Today, Como Bluff is quiet again. No gunfire, no rivalries, only wind sweeping through sage and the echo of hammers long gone. Visitors can walk among the old quarry pits where weathered bones still peek through red stone. A plaque marks the birthplace of the bonewars, honoring both Marsh and Cope. It reads simply, "Here the history of life was written in stone. Modern scientists come not to compete, but to listen. Every fossil is a voice, every layer a page of time. They scan the hills with lasers, measure isotopes, and trace the movements of creatures that vanished before birds first sang." Como Bluff is no longer a battlefield. It is a cathedral carved not by faith, but by patience and dust. And as the sun sets over Wyoming, the ridge glows crimson like an ember that refuses to die. The war is over, but the bones still speak.